Hi, I'm Mary Beth Stapleton, Manager of Family and Community Partnerships for Harford County Public Schools. Welcome to the Parent Academy Real Talk with the Communi-Team, the Teacher of the Year Finalists, and our Teacher of the Year. They're joining us to talk with parents about how we can support our children outside of the school. How can we support learning at home? And what are those teachers' tips and tricks on how to do that? So we're starting with elementary school, and we have Ms. Ashley Girelli, who is our Teacher of the Year for Harford County Public Schools. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Ms. Amy Wolf, who is our other Teacher of the Year finalist. So thanks for being here. I know you also have other titles in the system, so I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourselves and what you do, and I'll start with Ashley.
Sure. My name is Ashley Girelli. I am a Title I Behavior Intervention Coach for Harford County Public Schools, and I serve special education in the Title I schools at Joppatown Elementary, Havre de Grace Elementary, and Halls Crossroads Elementary School.
Great. And how long have you been with the system?
So this is year 7.
Wow.
Previously, before moving into this new role, I was at Churchville Elementary School as a special education teacher for 6 years.
Nice. And I think we've seen videos of you with your students on that celebration of that Teacher of the Year. So congratulations. I know your kids were so proud.
Thank you. I love them dearly. That community is always going to have a special place in my heart.
Well, I was there the other day and we were doing another video, and it's just such a loving school environment. It's such a positive place to be. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Amy.
Yes, I am the elementary reading specialist at Swan Creek Elementary. I've been with Harford County for 11 years now, and before Swan Creek, I was at Hickory, and I served a few different roles. I was a special educator in a few different roles, and then in the classroom as a second grade teacher.
Great. So as Teachers of the Year, we know that you really do have an expertise in all things education, so not to put you on the spot, but we really want to focus for parents on, from a teacher's perspective, how do we engage parents in our children's learning, right? So as parents, how do we engage with our children's learning? And so thinking about that, I'll start with you, Ashley. As a teacher and as you coach other teachers, how do you welcome and honor and connect with your students' parents and families? How do you make that part of your intentional work?
Sure. I think to be successful in education, period, I think it all depends on building a genuine and authentic relationship. So connecting with the families and making an effort to get to know them and their situations, whatever that may be, and having them feel that connection to you because you're working with their child every day. And the more that you get to know their child and the more that you get to know that family, the better you can serve them. So getting to know, what their weekends look like, what their days look like, and honoring that for them, getting to know them and what times you can meet with them and what times work best for them. Those little details go such a long way. And really getting to know the child too, when you're speaking to that family and developing that relationship, they know that, you are doing your work, but you're doing that work coming from the heart.
Right, and thinking about how you reach out, thinking about that, Amy, as you're working with parents, what are some ways that parents should expect teachers to reach out? What should parents be hearing from, seeing from teachers to make sure that, they really are getting that kind of customer service that should be expected?
A lot of teachers at the start of the year do reach out in elementary school with a form or a survey or something coming home asking parents to share about their child. And as a teacher, that is such valuable information because the caregivers are really the experts on the child. They've known them the longest. So being able to give the teacher that valuable information at the start of the year is really just a special thing for us. So when those things come home, that's a great opportunity to share about your child so that we can start that relationship, that teamwork together and really get to know them. And I would also say if that didn't present itself, to reach out and ask for a face-to-face or a phone conference, or even just send an email and share with the teachers about your child. Really, that is the best way to get everybody up to speed and working as a team as fast as possible.
So maybe for parents, not necessarily sitting back and waiting, but maybe reaching out as well and saying, I'm here, this is my email, I'd love to be able, and we know that phone calls are good as well. Could be a little bit challenging for teachers, obviously, during the school day, but definitely that email. As a parent, I've noticed that teachers really do respond to emails frequently, so that's a helpful tool.
Absolutely.
And then that's a really great point about the start of the school year, really trying to start that relationship at the beginning of the school year. And as we share this with parents, it's going to be after the first report card. So thinking about that first, just real progress on how your child's doing, and really getting a sense of strengths and perhaps areas of growth. How do you think parents should hear from teachers about areas of growth? Like, what kind of information should parents be seeing from teachers about how their child's doing?
Absolutely. I think, keeping an eye out for those emails that may come through and the parent communication systems that their schools have in place, that is critical. Those open lines of communication really make it where we can, as teachers, provide that kind of information and keep them up to speed with their child's progress. But I think Amy really did a nice job presenting, like, the open lines of communication and that constant communication is really how you can access knowledge of that progress, and to see that work coming home and sitting down with your child at the end of the day and touching base with your child's teacher to be able to stay up to speed and be more proactive than reactive.
Right, and I think it's knowing what's coming next too is helpful too for parents to kind of be clear. Is there a quiz coming, or is there a reading assignment or something like that, just to kind of be on top of it to support that teacher. But then as we get into the report card monitoring phase, Amy, just thinking about, if a parent is concerned, right, there's an area that your child might not be reading at grade level, or they're worried about it. And I know parents, wake up at 4 a.m. worried about it. So that's what we do. So just thinking about that, what are some proactive things that parents can do once they see that first quarter report on how to move the needle forward for their child?
Right, I'd say if you have any concerns about your child, to definitely reach out, express those concerns, start the conversation. I would say I know we're talking right around report cards, but for future years, I wouldn't even wait until report card time. As soon as you have a concern, it's important to be proactive and reach out earlier rather than later. I know that checking the grades on HAC is really important for the intermediate grades, and I'd say even way before report cards come out, to be checking that and monitoring how your student's doing and reaching out to the teachers. But when report cards do come out, there's always the option for a conference if you have concerns. Again, email is a really great way to communicate, because you can express those concerns and really explain them very well to the teacher, so that they can look at their data, look at their information that they have, and really respond to that well for you. So yes, I agree, just keeping those lines of communication open is so important.
Right, so it's two-way. It's not just waiting for the teacher, but really, that's really a great point, that we really want to monitor throughout every quarter, not just at report card time. Because if there is a concern, the teachers can address that, right? Ashley,
Yeah.
I mean, you can do something to intervene and assist with the reading or the math or anything that's lagging.
Absolutely, and the opportunities are really endless. So unless you speak up and you have those open communication lines, you don't know what you could possibly be doing to support your child. So there may be opportunities to come in and have a parent-teacher conference, or meet virtually through Teams, or have that phone call to really touch base and go through some work samples. So just reaching out and staying in touch is the best piece of advice that we could offer.
Great. And then as we finish up, just thinking about transitions and how important transitions are. And I just want to emphasize that for parents, that those transition years are really so important. So thinking about elementary transitions and thinking about onboarding our kindergarten students, are there anything that parents should think about with kindergartners specifically that perhaps we should support with our little ones?
I think for kindergartners especially, the softer skills are just as important as the things that people normally talk about, like their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s. And what I mean is being able to socially interact, being able to ask for help when needed, growing independence in certain skills, even as simple as putting on your jacket and following directions and all of those things. Those skills are just as important as the more concrete skills that we sometimes think about when we're thinking about
Yeah,
ready
so
for
those are
kindergarten.
skills actually parents can reinforce, even perhaps even just being polite and saying thank you and please and yes and all of those things that are so important. And I think that that's a really great point, because as parents we sometimes get wrapped up in, oh my gosh, how are they doing with their reading skills? And you're like, no, we really just need them to be nice right now. That's the most important thing. We'll get them to the reading, right? So that's a really great point. And then Ashley, thinking about transitioning, gosh, we hear from fifth grade parents all the time, what is coming next? And I do think we can do more about sharing what's coming next, but you know, as the year progresses, fifth grade parents are going to get even more anxious. And so we know that if our parents are calm, our students are calm. And so how do we coach our fifth grade parents about what's coming next? What are some things they should be thinking about?
I think it's so, I think of, as a special educator, fifth grade was really where I lived. That was like my wheelhouse.
Oh, wow.
And those conversations were some of the ones that have always stuck with me, because it's so driven by academics all the time. And we just talked about it with kindergarten and those social skills and those soft skills that we often overlook. It's the same at fifth grade too. And you need to look at them as a whole child and thinking about, how are their organization skills? What can we trial right now in fifth grade that they may be able to carry into middle school with them to help ease that transition? The organization skills, maybe some schedules, and like thinking about like what's working right now, and like having those kind of conversations with your child and thinking about what's working and what can we carry as we move forward, and talking to your child's teacher and thinking about their day as a whole child of, where do they struggle? Where do they succeed? Where are their challenges? What are you doing as a teacher that I could really advocate for my child at a middle school level so that teacher carries it over too? Those kind of conversations are so powerful, and the more open that you are with your child's teacher, the more your child's teacher would be like, oh yeah, I do need to tell them that too. Like that's the little nuts and bolts of their day that make their day can be carried over in that transition process.
And I think as a parent, fifth grade is not too early to start talking about the child's passion, right? What are they interested in?
Absolutely.
Because we know when we get to middle school, they can really actually even start kind of thinking about that too, and thinking about, well, is there a signature program or a magnet program? And you know, some of our parents might wait till 8th grade, but that could be a little late in order to really get a sense. And so having those conversations in fifth grade are probably really essential.
Super powerful.
Yeah.
And you start to see, like you said, those passions come to light in fifth grade. I mean, you see it all the way from kindergarten up, where you're like, oh, you're really taking to animals and you want to read about animals, or oh, you know, you're excelling in math, like you're really passionate about numbers and equations. But tapping into those superpowers and really highlighting that as a positive for that child, I think can carry them a long way, and making them aware of, even at fifth grade level, talking about like the North Hartford Ag program, or you know, the different programs that we offer as a county, so they can start, you know, seeing their future and what they want as a whole person.
And just a term for that is what we call academic socialization. It's parents understanding what's coming next so that they can help their child get to the next level. And that's so essential. And I know you all do that every day for our children, so thank you so much for that. And thank you for being here and for taking your time out of your busy day to support our parents in this really valuable information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, welcome back. Here we are with two more of our Communi-Team Teacher of the Year finalists. We have Dr. Rebecca Galt and Ms. Liz Nemeth. Thanks both for joining me.
Thank you.
And here we are, we're going to talk about secondary. How can parents support their secondary, middle and high school students with success outside of the school and in the home? And so we're just so thankful that you both took time out of your busy schedules and to join us for this. But before we get started, it's always good for parents to know more about our guests. So I'll start with you, Dr. Galt, if you could give a little bio on your background.
Sure. So I have been in the system for 32 years.
Wow.
It's been a wonderful experience. I have taught at Aberdeen Middle School and Bel Air Middle School for the first 22 years of my career. Most recently, I'm at Bel Air High School, and I've been there this is now my 5th year at Bel Air High School. So it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm so grateful to have had a nice career in a wonderful school system.
We're grateful we had you for over 30 years. That's wonderful. And Ms. Nemeth.
I teach 7th grade social studies at Howard E. Grace Middle School. I've been there this is my 16th year, and it's also my alma mater, so it's like my home and, you know, my passion. I love being part of the Warriors.
Great, the Warriors. I love
Yeah.
that. So we're going to focus on both middle and high. So it's great that we have both of you here to give us some guidance, because we understand with parent engagement, it changes a bit when our children get to middle and high school, and that's okay. We know we want our children to be a bit more independent, and those elementary years are really setting the foundation, as we just heard. But then we need to build on that foundation, and it's just a different way to do that and to support at home. It might not be quite as visible in the school, but it's certainly happening. So to start with that, I'll start with middle school if I can. And if we think about, as a teacher, how do you welcome and honor and connect with students, parents, and families in a middle school setting, because you have so many students now, right? And parents have so many teachers for their children. So how do you make those relationships happen?
So I think it's important to touch base, even with an email to parents in the beginning of the year stating who you are, maybe some of your policies, so that parents that might not be able to come to back to school night, they're able to connect with you and know more about you. Relationships are so big, so I like to get to know my students and ask them questions and give them an opportunity to tell me about themselves so that I can know more about what their family is like. And I like to make positive phone calls home, so that allows for that connection between school and home, and explaining what a wonderful child that these parents have raised and sent to school, that I get to be a part of their lives. So.
Wow, that must be such a fabulous phone call for a parent to receive, because I think sometimes, unfortunately, if we hear from a school where, what's wrong, but it's nice to say, this is what's right. So that's fabulous. Thank you for that. And then for the high school, I'm just really reaching out and making those connections. How do you do that as a high school teacher?
Right. So I think those face-to-face opportunities are so important when the back-to-school nights and the conferences and the open houses are offered, to just be fully present in those moments and greet people by name, be good role models for how to develop relationships, because sometimes kids are in tow in those situations, and so not only being just fully present for those opportunities, but then to follow up on some of the things that Ms. Nemeth suggested and recommended, which is those positive emails, positive postcards home, positive phone calls, and so those are, I think, some of those ways that those relationships can be built.
Well, that's great. And then when you think about a parent who has a multitude of teachers, right, that they have to kind of keep track of, any ideas or suggestions on how they can really manage, really just kind of knowing the class, the teacher, because like you're saying, in a back to school night, I remember you're going from class to class to class, and okay, that was math and that was English, and I don't necessarily remember who that teacher was. Any ideas on how parents can keep track of that?
Absolutely. So I really recommend that parents create a calendar that has a day in the life for their child or their children, so that they can paint a picture in their own minds of what their child is going throughout the day. And so that would include what teacher they have, what time period, and that way they can get to know these multitude of teachers. So if you have one kid, there's 8 teachers. If you've got 2, that's 16. If you've got 3, that's 24. And then with special area teachers switching every quarter, you could be up to 30 plus teachers. And so really creating something where you can see a visual of your kids' classes by teacher name, which can be really helpful in starting to understand that relationship that your child has with their teachers, and then you're building that relationship as well. And when you ask your child about their day, I have found that some specificity with that is really helpful. So instead of how was your day, maybe what was the best part of your day, or how are things going in Miss Nemeth's class? Instead of doing the history piece of it, maybe how is Miss Nemeth's class going? And it builds that idea in that child's mind that their teacher is a human being, that you as the parent value him, her, as a human being, and that it starts to really solidify the importance of that shared relationship between the student, the teacher, and the parent.
And that shared relationship is just so important, really. I mean, I know that having that ongoing support with everybody for that child is just, we have research to show that's successful. So having parents on top of that, that's a really great idea that I think I'm going to steal. So, but then as we're getting to, as I mentioned with elementary, we're getting to that report card time, and HACC is really essential for middle and high. So first and foremost, making sure you're on HACC and checking HACC as a parent is essential. But then Ms. Nemeth, thinking about reaching out to parents, really kind of getting a sense of how do you help parents understand their child's strengths and where they need to grow, and how do parents get a sense of that when you're in a middle school setting?
So a lot of times in middle school, one thing that's wonderful is that we can have team meetings. So all of the teachers, for the most part, can be at a meeting. So if a parent is concerned or just wants to check in, they can schedule a parent-teacher conference during the school day. And the team can meet and they can share those strengths and places that the child might have areas to grow in is always a great way. Reaching out to the teachers and asking is a great opportunity. I know a lot of middle school teachers will send out emails about upcoming assignments and things to kind of keep them in the loop, because it can be difficult to keep track of everything and what's going on. So just kind of touching base with parents, scheduling those conferences if you feel like they're needed, and then just having that open line of communication either through phone or email is a great way to kind of keep track of how they're doing.
Right, and I think with the elementary conversation, it's probably good here too to note, maybe not wait until the report card comes out, but really be clear about how their progress is and any concerns you may have or any strengths you might want to share. I know, there's some children that are actually excelling and might need, okay, so my kid's really doing really well in this content area. What can I do to kind of enrich that? So it can be both things for sure. And then thinking about that for high school, again, those areas of strength and growth, gosh, you have so many students to keep track of, right? And so how do you manage that with parents? How do you make sure they're aware of that progress for each of your students? That's a big job.
It is a big job. And so a couple tips. Again, I really encourage parents to be checking HACC, reaching out to the teachers if there are any concerns. And then I often suggest, and I tell my kids this as well, and I encourage parents to follow a model in how we communicate with each other. So, start those emails with a greeting, and then share the question or the concern, and then have a sentence that says something about we have a shared goal, because it's so important that parents know that teachers, we want your child to do well. And so if you have this system of almost like a sandwich to your email where there's something positive, I hope you're having a good day, here's my question or my concern, I know we share the same goal, we want Johnny to be successful, and then end with something positive as well. It really sets the stage for that shared relationship, because we as teachers, we want your kids to be successful. We know that when you share those concerns, you have that heart and love for your child at stake. And so if we can form relationships and really teach our children through our role modeling as teachers and as parents how to have shared relationships, not oppositional relationships. Instead, we're all working together. We all want the same thing. So those are some tips for just communicating in those ways that are going to really set our kids on the best path forward for success.
That's great. Yeah. And you wanted to add?
And I was just thinking, one thing I really admire that some parents do is they teach, you can tell that maybe a parent has taught them how to send an email for themselves, so they are learning that process of being independent and advocating. I just got one yesterday where a student asked, what assignments can I make up? So starting that process so that students know as they get older how to advocate for themselves, and starting that process early. So that the parent and the student are obviously having that conversation about, we want to improve, we want to do better, and giving that student the empowerment to learn how to advocate for themselves and their their success.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thinking of empowerment and having them be ready for the next phase, I wanted to focus as we wrap up, again, as I did with elementary, transitions are everything. And we know that those concerns for parents tend to bubble up a little bit at those transition times. So thinking about onboarding 6th grade, we'll start with that. What are some things that parents can do to support? I mean, I know we're at the end of the first quarter, but even just throughout the year as that 6th grade year moves on, anything that you would want to share?
Yeah, so I think definitely taking those opportunities. I know we're thinking about, 6th graders now, but like take those opportunities for those orientations, those back to school nights. So those kids, I know I was an anxious kid, so letting them come in and see the school and just understand, because that creates a sense of calm once you know where you're going and the lay of the land. And then just, again, that open line of communication with teachers, coming in whenever, there are events at the school, so that you feel more connected to the school as well.
And that said, I think with 6th grade in particular, I remember you really do kind of have to step back a little bit, right? Because there are some skills for independence that kids need to learn in 6th grade versus 5th grade, right? Yeah, that's hard for parents to do. And then thinking on the other end for middle school, we know 8th grade right now, we've got a lot of families that are looking at opportunities for high school, right? And so thinking about that and supporting that. Any ideas on how to help kids, and maybe from the secondary lens of high school, to transition, right, 8th to 9th, and a smooth transition?
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities in our county for all of those different magnet programs. So taking the opportunity and reminding students, we had all of the magnet schools at our outside of our cafeteria the other day. So taking that opportunity to learn about them and see, identifying passions and what might be their next step. So kind of looking forward to what's going to be offered in high school. And that's something that can really start being done in 6th and 7th grade, because a lot, building those academics to get into those programs and seeing what your child's interested in really starts before 8th grade, because that's when they start applying. So just kind of having a forward look at where they're going will really help them.
Yeah, and then thinking about that forward look of where they're going, you have them at the end of the journey. So some ideas for parents on how to really encourage. And we hear college and career, and so really being clear about what that is going to be for your child, right? Is it going to be just going right out into the workforce or getting some kind of a certification, or is it going to college? Just some thoughts about how to navigate that, because that's a little bit of a murky water for some families. So
absolutely. So I've been blessed to teach 9th grade these last 5 years. And so I really get to see the kids as they come from middle school right into high school. And one of the biggest things that I have to work on with some of our kids is those behaviors that are appropriate for a job. And those are always the conversations that I have with kids that gets them really to focus in on what it is that they need to be doing. So many of our kids come to high school with some of those, I guess they would be the soft skills, but they're so important no matter what job the kids are going to have, which is, listening to those directions that a teacher is giving as if that teacher is their boss, and that they are showing that respect and that willingness to learn and be coachable and teachable. And then when it's time to have conversations, that the kids are able to lean in and listen to each other. And again, many of our kids are coming with those skills, and many kids are coming with some skills that are not necessarily going to work well in a job setting. And so really getting the kids to think for a moment, is this in 2 years, 1 to 2 years, you will be working. Some of our 9th graders are working now. And so to say to them, is this what you think your employer wants from you? And immediately the light bulb goes on and there is a shift in that behavior. So if those conversations can be happening at home, it's really important. And I will add that I often have conversations with my kids too about the idea that they will be future leaders. And so if you are sitting in a setting where your boss is looking out on the room, which in this case you guys are, on the job in training as 9th graders, who's emerging as a leader and what do those behaviors look like? Because the opportunities that will arise in any career for kids to become managers and supervisors and ahead of leading a grant or leading a research project. And so again, I think that then the light bulb starts to go on for kids when they start to see, wow, my success now really rides on my ability to develop these behaviors that are even more important than the academics, quite frankly.
And we actually hear that from our community. So we hear from our business partners that unfortunately, I mean, not to make it negative, but sometimes they'll get some employees that come to them without that skill set. They may be incredibly proficient at the math skill or the mechanics skill or whatever that skill is, computer skill, but they don't necessarily know how to relate to their colleagues and they don't know how to communicate. So I think that's a really good skill that parents could assist with in the home and in the community and model themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly the case when students get to see their teachers and their coaches and their parents all modeling those behaviors of good listening, developing good relationships, having shared goals. Those then really transfer to that child and the light bulb goes off and you can see that success starting to build as they develop those behaviors and then also, do a good job with their academics. But it's really getting the kids to have that light bulb go on that their future is really riding on the ability to develop these really good workplace behaviors.
Right, and it sounds like we both hit those social skills for middle and high and how essential.
I'm stealing this for 7
I love that. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So what an employer. I am your boss. You are my,
Right.
and actually even having them relate to each other as colleagues in the workplace. Would you speak to your colleague in the workplace like that and would that do well for you, right? So these are really good ideas. This
The
is
wheels
great.
are already turning for a
Yeah.
lesson.
Okay, right?
You got a lesson
Yes,
already in place.
yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much for your time. I appreciate you and all that you do for our families and our students. And we know that because our children are in your classrooms, they will be fully prepared for college, work, and life. So thank you for your time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much,
Of
Meredith.
course.
This
Thank
has
you
been
so much.
great. Yes.
And we'll see you next time on Parent Academy Real Talk.